All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the April 2023 edition of Meet ATP. I'm Krista Mays, the director of the ATP program, and I'm joined by several senior members of the program, Jim Kilgallen, underwriting manager, and Joe Devlin, senior underwriter. And we are very excited to have some special guest stars from NSM's in-house claims team, Dave Gagliardi, Sarah Hunt, and Bill Bornichella. The theme of our presentation today is trust. So our goal is for, at the end of the presentation, for you to understand why it's a great idea for you to trust ATP and our team with your business. A couple of housekeeping items before we get rolling into the webinar. The first 30 agents to register and attend today's presentation will receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you to everyone who registered early and is attending the presentation live. Liz Seaman from our marketing department will be connecting with you via email either at, later today or tomorrow at some point to make sure that you can receive your prize. Everyone on the webinar is muted currently. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the questions section. We do have 10 or 15 minutes allotted at the end of the time to address all the questions. We'll get to absolutely as many as we possibly can, and hopefully we have a lot. But the webinar is also being recorded and will be distributed to everyone that registered. So if you have any questions that you don't want to share or put in the questions box and you want to connect with us offline, that's also an option. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so quick agenda, what we will cover today. We'll start with setting a little context with some background about NSM Insurance Group and the ATP program, get into some market outlook observations from our perspective on the behavioral health marketplace, and also talk about some commercial auto trends and claims trends and things that we're seeing from our perspective within our program, but we think are probably pretty far-reaching for the industry as a whole. Then our claims team will jump in and let you know what they do and the great value that they bring to ATP and all of the NSM programs, and share some particular overall claims trends from the behavioral health market. And then, as I said, we'll have some time at the end for questions. So NSM Insurance Group was actually founded by Jeff McKernan, who's our CEO, back in 1990 as a retail agency. So at that point, we were a retail shop, quickly morphed into a program administrator. But everything that we do to this day, from our service standards to our claims handling, is really done with a purpose and done from the perspective of understanding what a retail agency, needs, wants, how to make how to make your life easier. So today, NSM, 32 years later, is a program administrator managing 25 plus B2B and B2C insurance programs. We write about 1.5 billion in premium, and we are manned by 1,200 employees across 14 office locations, both in the US and the UK. Go to the next slide. And this is a snapshot of some of our core specialty programs. We won't go through all of these today, but if there's a vertical that you need, a class of business you need to place, chances are we do have a program for them. Just to highlight a couple of things, our KBK program targets towing and recovery operators and used car dealerships and repair shops, as well as a garaging program. Our HAPPRO program is an E&S solution for apartments and condos. And then many of you may be very familiar with our Care Providers program, our CPS program, which is a sister program to ATP, and they do all things social service, primarily on a not-for-profit basis. So some of the background to the ATP program in particular, 18 years ago, we were motivated and committed to meet a market need. We were approached, or Jeff McKernan, our CEO, was approached at the time by the then executive director of the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. Their membership had a need for really an insurance product that was tailored to them. At that point, there weren't any truly enhanced coverages available for that membership. There was no one-stop shop market. They had their professional placed one place, GL another, property another. So they were looking to really button something up and have a product that they could offer to their membership. So Jeff said about creating the program, establishing the underwriting guidelines, securing our carrier, and in 2005 we wrote our first policy, and we've been going strong ever since for the last 18 years. So today we're still motivated and committed to meet a market need because the insurance industry obviously continues to evolve, as does the behavioral health market. It continues to grow and evolve and change. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we're keeping up with those changes and providing a product that's useful to that marketplace and to our agents that write that business. We work with for-profit and non-for-profit organizations. We write on an occurrence and claims-made basis. We continue to expand our appetite outside of the addiction treatment market, also into more of the broader reaching behavioral health marketplace through outpatient mental health facilities. And we just make a big effort to continue to innovate and evolve to be the leading insurance provider in this space through disciplined, diligent underwriting. That's really the foundation of our program. It's what's allowed us to have the longevity that we have. We continue to enhance our products and our coverages. We're very proud of the relationships that we've built with our agency base. Obviously, our in-house claims team, we're huge fans of them. We can't wait for you to hear what they have to say later on. And we also keep our ear to the ground with building relationships and having involvement, and we support several industry organizations, and such as the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, ATOD, which is the American Association for the Treatment of Opioid Dependence, and then NAR, which is the National Alliance for Recovery Residences. And these are the faces of ATP. This is a group that I'm super proud of. They do a great job collectively. We have over 30 years of insurance and behavioral health experience. When you work with us, you have direct access to your underwriting team. We work in teams of two, one underwriter to one underwriting assistant. So you have that underwriting expertise and that service expertise in one team. Again, going back to, kind of that trust theme and really building those relationships. And if you could let me boast a little bit more, again, with our building trust theme, we have, I'd like to share a couple of testimonials from a longer term insured, and then also one of our longer term agents, Beth Bilstein from Hub International in Carlsbad. I think she may have placed one of the very first pieces of business with our program 18 years ago. There's several accounts that we continue to write with her over that 18-year span, which is pretty crazy and pretty impressive. So we appreciate her business and her partnership. And Zach Talbot from Talbot Legacy Centers has been an insured of ours for quite a few years, and he has a multi-location opioid treatment provider. So to shift gears into what we're seeing in the marketplace for behavioral health care, at the moment, the numbers are that $170 billion in revenue is within the behavioral health market, and over 46 billion of that is attributed to the substance use disorder market or addiction treatment facilities. And we're anticipating 5 to 10% growth across multiple segments of that industry. And Jim, a little later, will tell you about all of the different segments that we focus on and target and write within our program. But the growth is predicted in response to, not surprisingly, the ever-increasing need for treatment and recovery services. The latest published statistics from SAMHSA's 2020 national survey indicated that 41 million people over 12 years of age needed treatment for illicit drug and alcohol use problems, and only 2.7 million of those individuals actually received treatment at a specialty facility. And obviously, since that was published post-pandemic, that need is even greater. So if there was any question about the viability and the opportunity available to the insurance marketplace within behavioral health, I think these numbers kind of speak for themselves. There's also some financial support coming into this space via private equity firms are very interested in this sector of business. The government has a multi-year plan to filter more money of support into growing treatment services, and private pay insurance companies are also stepping up and providing private insurance coverage for an expanded list of mental health and addiction treatment services. Okay, so right now I'm going to turn the reins over to Joe Devlin, who is the senior underwriter for the ATP program.
Thanks, Krista. Okay, so as everyone on this call is with clients in this industry is probably aware, PL is the most important and oftentimes the hardest piece to wrap our collective heads around when looking at these risks. I mean, we ourselves as underwriters spend most of our time looking over insurance policies and procedures and focusing on PL, GL type exposures. I mean, let's face it, we're underwriting around suicides and overdoses. But as Jim's going to touch on briefly, we offer a lot of other coverages, and one of them is commercial auto. And as everyone here is also aware, either personally or commercially, auto rates continue to rise every year. I mean, in fact, according to the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, we're in the 11th straight year of auto rates increasing, which is like really remarkable. And given the fact that we're in a hard market and everything laid out on this slide here on that third bullet point, I'd anticipate that trend continuing into the next couple of years, in fact. So we're in for a while for the auto rates to increase. Next slide. Yeah, so like I mentioned, when I'm underwriting an account, my primary focus is on the GL, PL exposures, but auto is undoubtedly a loss driver for our program. So it's really that it doesn't come to a surprise to any of us here at ATP that the industry's collective need to push rate. But that alone is kind of a short-sighted fix to the problem. I mean, it's hardly even a Band-Aid to try and collect a few extra bucks to mitigate the loss payouts on these claims. That's why we work very closely with our agents and our insureds on implementing proper risk management, specifically around auto. I mean, quite frankly, fleet safety should be a top priority with your risk manager or HR director, whoever's in charge over there. And we're here to help with that. Our carrier partner, Allied World, has a whole library full of loss control services, as we'll touch on the next slide. They can be tailored to small, medium, large type fleets. Basically, whatever you would need, we can tailor that for you. So again, the big benefit of working with us is getting access to our loss control library. We have many different online courses, which can really be molded to what your insurer needs, whether they want to do group type trainings once a month, or if they have a particular driver that they want to have go through some training. There's plenty of online courses. I mean, these courses range from CDL type classes that if you have if you're transporting a lot of clients in like a 12, 15, 20 passenger van, just your basic defensive driver classes. I mean, there's a lot of different courses you can access here. But in addition to just the online stuff, we actually do on-site loss control, which part of that is the typical loss control. We'll have someone walk through, look for hazards during the insurance building, make sure exits are well lit, things like that. But as part of that, we'll sit down with your HR manager or risk manager and go through different policies and procedures you have in place, whether that's your MVR review or vehicle maintenance or driver safety training or onboarding, whatever. They'll sit down and go through all those processes and try to make some recommendations on how they can be improved. One of these that I think is very underutilized is the telematics. In my prior life here at NSM, I worked in the claims department working with this program very closely and working with Dave, who's going to be speaking shortly. And we tracked a lot of metrics around insureds who were using the telematics. And Dave, you could probably speak better to this than I can. If you remember some of those results, you could share.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So there were pilots done for auto telematics, and some of the test groups showed an 80% reduction in claims, which is huge. We found that the key to those great results was a factor we don't often hear about in telematics discussions, but we felt it was important to implement. And it's that drivers need to be told that they're regularly being watched. That was the key and the difference. Some of the other test groups that didn't do as well, they still did fairly well, 20% improvements, but that was lower than the ones where those drivers were told on a regular basis they're being watched, and that was a big key. So we know that's an important factor. But yes, auto telematics are a great benefit. Joe?
Yeah, so again, whether it's the telematics, the online class, I mean, whether it's 20 or whether it is 80% decrease in losses, I mean, it really does make a difference. So, I mean, we really want our insureds to utilize these services. So now I'm going to pass it over to Jim, actually, who's going to talk a little more about auto and our program appetite and whole.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so let's kind of get into the nitty gritty of what we do here on ATP, starting off with the program appetite. I'm sure many of you that are in this space or have been in it for some time know that more recently carriers are starting to pull back on different eligible classes that they're targeting. Thankfully, at ATP, we still have a robust appetite for behavioral health providers, kind of getting into the specific segments of behavioral health that we target at this time. At the crux of everything, addiction treatment or substance abuse facilities make up the bulk of what we do on each and every day. Falling under that, the addiction treatment space, we have residential or inpatient providers, and then also on an outpatient basis, we can entertain those as well. Falling under the outpatient umbrella, we have, capacity for partial hospitalization programs, intensive outpatient programs, in addition to that traditional outpatient setting. Going down further within the outpatient addiction providers, we have a specific subset of opioid treatment providers, or OTP clinics, or medication-assisted treatment providers. All of that more commonly known as methadone clinics. They make up a decent percentage of our book. We've written them for quite some time, and through partnerships with the ATOT Association, which kind of establishes best practices for those providers. We've developed quite a great partnership with those specifically. Getting down more into the transitional and post-recovery or post-inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment programs, we write quite a few of sober living and recovery residences, and that's really truly where the recovery happens, right? The folks go into a formal inpatient program or on an outpatient setting, and then they may need some additional time to put what they've learned into place, and that's where the sober living and recovery residences come into play. We've seen that particular segment grow exponentially, I would say, within the past 5 to 7 years. In addition to that, we can entertain a number of faith-based treatment programs. Those are pretty big. And then also some other items like eating disorder focused programs, and then other addiction associated programs that are aside from substance abuse, such as gambling addiction. And when you're getting into more of the mental health side of things versus addiction, knowing most times the two go hand in hand, but when it's primarily treating folks with a leading mental health issue, and they may have an addiction issue, but they may not, we're focusing solely really on the outpatient providers in that space. So that's just an overview of, the appetite, and now, let's see what the product looks like, right? So we're a full package program. We can write essentially through our carrier partner, where we have, underwriting authority and work closely with them. They're Allied World Assurance Company, or AWAC. They're an A-rated carrier, Fairfax-based company. We, through them, write 3 different types of policies. The one being the package policy, which includes the most lines of coverage, your standard property, general liability. Within the general liability, we have a specific sublimit that we offer for sexual and or physical abuse liability, which we find very important for the behavioral health class. Just when you have different unrelated individuals being in the same space together, that's an added protection for the providers. It covers both client on client and then client and employee situations. Then within the package policy, we have professional liability, which can cover, the professional exposures for the treating providers that are within the insured. Within that, we offer the option to schedule primary coverage for any employed and contracted physicians or psychiatrists. And then non-treating medical directors are included as insureds on a primary basis without having to be scheduled. We can write all liability lines on either occurrence or claims made form. And then, so that's kind of the package policy in a sense. And then when you go on to the next items that we can cover, which we may not necessarily have to do on every single account, but some that have fleets of vehicles, we can write a commercial auto policy where it makes sense. And then to round everything out, we have the option to write umbrella liability policies that would fall over most of the underlying coverages, including your general liability, professional liability, and auto. Within the program, we can write up to $5 million in limits on that umbrella policy. And then just some other ancillary coverages that would fall otherwise under the package. We can include some inland marine, equipment breakdown, that would be a part of the property coverage line, some commercial crime, and then employee benefits liability, which would fall under the general liability. And then just in addition to the items that we can underwrite in-house here, we do offer some additional key coverages that we think are very important for the behavioral health providers. We don't necessarily underwrite these, but we act in somewhat of a wholesale capacity and try to just make everything as much of a one-stop shop for you and your insureds. The first being participant or volunteer accident. We administer that through Crum & Forster, which is another Fairfax company. And that we kind of offer to use as a supplement to the general liability coverage. A lot of the places, providers, and more importantly, I would say on some of the transitional sober living housing, they do different special events like, family picnics, alumni day. They might be doing some volunteer or pickup basketball games where there's a potential for folks to get injured. So we like to offer this as a supplement to take pressure off their general liability coverage and limits. In addition to that, we can offer cyber liability coverage, which is becoming an even more pressing issue for this sector specifically. We can offer that through CFC, which is a Lloyd's of London syndicate. They can offer, high limits, very broad, robust coverage, and we can help assist with that. In addition to that product, we also have the capability to include a sublimit specific to cyber liability within our general liability coverage line, which is a $100,000 limit. But understanding some places, if some insureds might need more, we would then, kind of call upon the CFC piece for that. And then rounding it all out, we don't underwrite work comp within the ATP program specifically, but I think you may have saw on one of the earlier slides, NSM has a separate program, All Comp Solutions. They have a very broad appetite for a number of classes, one of which being the behavioral health sector. So whenever we see a submission, Joe, myself, or any of the other underwriters on our team that has a comp need, we, funnel the transfer of that over to those folks and they kind of take it from there. And I think now that we've, covered all of the product itself and all the add-on coverages that we offer, I'm going to kick it over to Dave Gagliardi, our Director of Claims, and his team, so you can get a better understanding of what they do and what they're seeing in terms of current claim trends.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Dave Gagliardi, Director of Claims for most of the programs at NSM. My background includes many years in both legal and claims. I've been an insurance defense attorney, been a plaintiff personal injury attorney, and I've been inside the insurance industry for more than 20 years. So I've seen all sides, and that's often helpful when we see challenging claims. Our claims department is comprised of a team of people, not just me. There are two others on this webinar, Sarah Hunt and Bill Bonachella. Sarah Hunt she's a whiz at everything we throw at her. She's been with us for roughly 5 years, and she's been a fantastic addition to the team. Some of you may have already talked to her if you've reached out to us for help. Bill Bonachella is here today as well. He's a former claims adjuster. He's been with us for 4 years, and he's also been a terrific addition to the team. Very helpful. They're always willing to help anyone out who contacts us. We have another member of the team I'll just mention, Jay Belcher. He's not on today's call, but some of the agents out there may know him if they deal with our CPS program. Jay has more than 30 years in the insurance industry. He's been around longer than me, including some time as a public adjuster. So like me, he's seen multiple sides, and that experience definitely helps in overseeing the claims. We don't handle the claims in NSM. Claims are handled by an outside entity for this ATP program. The claims entity is Athens. We talk with them every day. I'm sometimes on the phone with them at midnight. There's just no stopping. We're with them all the time. We watch over the claims closely, and the purpose of that is we want the best claims outcomes. So in dealing with them closely, that's what we usually get, best claims outcomes. Lastly, I want to mention that we are a resource to the agents for any claims related questions or issues. I always tell them when they call, don't hesitate to contact us if you need our assistance. So anybody out there, feel free to contact us. Sarah, would you want to start us off with a claim example?
Sure. Yep. Thanks for the intro, Dave. We're going to start off the claim scenarios by talking about a property loss that involves a pipe burst from freezing, which led to about $200,000 in water damages. We do see a lot of pipe burst claims on our programs, and they can really vary in size, so it's an important exposure to discuss. In this specific loss, investigation determined that the building appeared to be vacant for several months leading up to the loss, and this was something that neither NSM or the carrier was made aware of, the alleged vacancy. So the carrier initially did deny coverage based on the vacancy provision within the policy. However, after having discussions with the underwriting team and the insured's agent, new information surfaced that showed that the building was still being accessed by employees and utilities remained in use. Our team connected with the carrier and requested that they reconsider their coverage position. And in this scenario, the unique facts at play did help support that the building was truly not vacant, and it led to a reversal of the denial. So because Athens alerts NSM and does their best to do so with any pending coverage issues, our team's able to coordinate with underwriting and agents to address any potential concerns. And the main takeaways really from this scenario would just be to encourage insureds to keep utilities active and to report when buildings become vacant to any extent, so NSM's aware of the exposure. And I'm going to hand it over to Bill now to talk about our next claim scenario.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to talk to you today about a professional liability claim that has an unfortunate set of circumstances that we see all too frequently. In this case, a young woman was accepted into an addiction treatment facility, and upon being accepted, it was recommended that the client be placed on frequent monitoring for fear of self-harm. The client was later found in a room after hanging herself with bed sheets. The family later retained an attorney, and the estate alleged that the facility failed to check up on her within the recommended intervals. So let's talk about some takeaways here. Sometimes insureds do not have all policies and procedures in place that they should have, which can be problematic because if a claim situation does arise, that could be a main point of focus. Additionally, when insureds do have all the necessary policies and procedures, it is extremely important that those procedures are followed. And ideally, insureds should have checks and balances in place to be doubly sure that those procedures are followed. Because without that, you can be certain that some claim will come up that will make that a point of emphasis. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Dave, who'll talk about the next slide.
Thank you, Bill and Sarah. I want to briefly mention an example auto claim scenario, and unfortunately we see a lot of these where simple driver inattention turns into a large claim. This one involved a driver who rear-ended another vehicle that was stopped in traffic. Very common type of accident. There were two people in that other vehicle and both claimed injuries, again, fairly common. The passenger's claim was settled quickly, but the driver's claim took a while and had extensive medicals, and that's something that you might not expect based on, we don't have photos here to show you, but the damage of the vehicle was just not huge. So anyways, there was attorney representation and the driver's medicals were very high, much higher than they should have been. I think they were around $600,000. They submitted a life care plan for an absurd amount, roughly $9 million, which is very odd in a case of just alleged herniated discs. There was surgery, but it should have been all better after that. But anyways, we got a life care plan. We usually don't see the life care plans. That's a new trend. From the other side, normally you'd see them with paralysis or severe brain injury cases, but we got one on this claim and a big number. Anyways, in that state, the medicals are all boardable if the case goes to trial, so it's fairly obvious why they were running those numbers up really high under the idea that they could potentially board them at trial if they got that far. So some of the medicals were questionable, and even the surgical scarring appeared to us to be questionable. So we believe that looking into background medical is important, and sometimes that's not always done as thoroughly as what we want. So we pushed heavily and made sure that we got to that. And it had to do with that the driver was from a different state and had actually moved into this other state more recently. We made sure we got those prior medicals from the other state where that driver had moved from. We had some roadblocks initially, but we were able to get them and get a lot of them. And ultimately, that was a big help in getting a settlement that was at a number that was far below what might have otherwise resulted. The point of the claim is that multiple minds are better than one. So we're going to work closely with Athens, the claims handling entity, and then there's also the defense counsel in litigated cases. And if you just let a defense counsel act on their own, they may not think of everything. Maybe we can suggest some things to get, again, a better claims outcome. Same thing with any claims handling entity. So our claims department brings those added thoughts and directions in situations where the claims might have unique or unusual circumstances. Not all claims are like that, but we do see them. And so again, we can help guide to better outcomes. In terms of this auto accident, it was clearly behaviorally based, meaning that it was caused by driver behavior. It's likely that the use of telematics, which we mentioned before, could have prevented this and other accidents like that. So the important thing, again, to keep in mind, and I mentioned it before, is that telematics aren't necessarily a panacea on their own, but they're a great thing to have. But the real key there is the drivers need to be made aware that they're being watched. That's the real difference. That's what makes the difference every time. So they have to be told regularly. So we don't want them to fall into those bad habits again. So I could talk all day about this claim, but I'm not going to. I'm going to hand this back over. So.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So if there's one message that we would like for everyone to receive and to leave with, it's that you will matter to us when we work with you. We like to say that we're consistent but not cookie cutter. Even though we're a program and we have an underwriting box, we spend a lot of time, kind of thinking outside that box and coming up with solutions for our partner agents when we need to. Where we are consistent is within these pillars to our success: our industry, longevity, and expertise, our underwriting team, the people behind the program, having those designated specific relationships with each agency, our commitment to service standards every day. I tell the team that that's, where we live and die. We know that our job is to make agents' lives easier, to make you want to work with us, whether it's making sure that we're being proactive and, quickly reactive to answering phone calls and emails, issuing policies quickly, processing endorsements quickly, making sure billing is accurate. That's what we strive to do each and every day. And then we have those other really value-added things like the risk management and loss control services that are offered through a carrier. We heard about several of the auto-related loss control and risk management services. And as Jeff or Joe alluded to, we have a whole other menu of services available. Some of them class-specific. We're working with the carrier to get even more class-specific services, including a new customized risk management and self-assessment program for our larger accounts that we rolled out within the past year. And then, of course, saving the best for last, our in-house claims team that really provides that extra layer of service and trust building. So let's dive into some questions. Liz tells me that we have a few really good questions in the questions box.
Yes, thanks, Krista. Some great questions came in about coverages and a couple about telematics. So let's jump right in. The first one we have is, do you write new ventures?
We do. So, of course, all underwriters love when there's lots of experience and lots of loss history to look at as we're analyzing the risk. But we do write new ventures, and that's a product of really the growth of the industry that we were talking about a little bit earlier. There's a lot of new ventures and new treatment programs that are coming into the market. We do underwrite them a little more closely, obviously, and we like them to be accompanied, those submissions to be accompanied by resumes of executive leadership, business plans, and so forth. But I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary.
Great, that all makes sense. Couple specific questions about coverage. What are the maximum umbrella and excess limits available?
So we offer an umbrella up to 5 million.
Great. Another, what are PL, GL, and A&M coverages are PL, GL, and AM coverages first dollar?
Yes, they are. We can provide deductibles, if requested, if the account warrants it, or if it's requested. Sometimes, obviously higher deductibles can provide somewhat of a premium savings, but we prefer to provide first dollar limits.
Got it. Here's a couple that came in from Andrea. She says, will you include coverage for detox units or medical malpractice for the methadone clinics?
So detox is an exposure that, again, we underwrite it very closely. If it's 100% detox, just because of the level of exposure, we don't typically write 100% detox exposure. But if the detox is within the scope of the other services that perhaps like a residential treatment facility provides, our gauge there is that we try to keep that detox exposure to less than 25% of the exposure. And there's not a hard and fast formula. That's one of the nice things about what we do and our team, the expertise, the flexibility that we have within the program and with our carrier. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. We can really underwrite around that. But we do the 100% detox, typically a no-go. But we do provide, what was the other question? Medical malpractice for methadone clinics? Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. And then Andrea also asked, do you offer D&O or EPLI?
No, right now, that's one of the projects that we have at the top of our list. We're looking to secure a really good management liability product and provider, but at this point, that's not a coverage or a list of coverages that are available through the program.
Got it. A few questions also about coverages that just came in from Betsy. She says, please confirm the writing carrier for the package and umbrella coverages. She might have missed it.
Sure. Allied World Insurance Company is our exclusive carrier, or AWAC as they're sometimes better known.
Great. And she also asked, can you include scheduled physicians and psychiatrists?
Yes, we can.
Great. Let's go to a telematics question. Scott asks, for accounts that advised frequently to their drivers that they are being monitored, how many times during the year were they reminding their drivers they're being watched?
Joe and Christy, mind if I take that one?
No, I'm waiting for you to.
Yeah. Look, we found that I don't have any hard numbers for you right now, but we found that the best results were ones that were told frequently, which meant weekly. The ones who were told monthly showed not as good results, and the ones who weren't told showed much lower results. Still better than not having telematics, right? Because telematics is a good thing to have. But the real key there, and I guess I'm going to draw an analogy, and I think everyone who drives would recognize this. There are people who drive a bit aggressively or whatever, let's call it road rage, whatever you want to call it. They're driving in a way that maybe they might get a ticket. And when you're driving along on the highway, say I'm driving into work this morning, and we see a state trooper on the highway, everybody starts behaving because you're being watched, right? We've all seen this, and that's really the concept. So if the drivers are told, hey, you're being watched, and told regularly so they don't forget, and I would say weekly does make sense. That data sort of bore that out. It really made sense because if we draw an analogy to reality TV, and I had the occasion, it's a whole nother story for another day, but to talk to some reality TV folks, and I said, how do you behave in front of these cameras? Aren't these cameras really annoying? They're in your way. You're going to be reluctant to talk. And they say, no, you quickly forget about them. You don't even notice them anymore. And I think that's the issue with, if you tell the drivers only once a month that you're being watched, I think they're going to forget. And so maybe that's why we saw a difference in those results. That weekly is really important. So tell those drivers firmly, you are being watched. Don't forget. You're being watched. Do not deviate from your route. Do not speed. Do not blow off red lights and stop signs. Do not be texting. Do not hit 10 cars as you're approaching a red light where they're parked, et cetera. And it sounds crazy, but we see that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. Thank you for all those insights. A couple more questions. What are your limitations on property coverage, from Sean?
So that varies by geography. You know, we just an overall glimpse at kind of how we look at property. For every account for which we provide property coverage, we run a risk meter report to check for wildfire scores, wind and hail, tornado, convective storm probability, things like that. So all of that goes into it. We don't write a lot of truly coastal property. That might be where the question is around. So we don't write any property in Florida, for example. And we you know, tend to just, we're not a cat market for property. But you know, again, we have some, you know, limitations depending on the geographic territory. But if there are specific questions in specific areas, we're happy to go offline and discuss that.
Great. There's a follow-up question that just came in that might be related. Are the GL, PL, and sexual misconduct limits separate?
Yes, they're all their own separate 1-3 limits.
Got it. 2 more questions. Do you include 5 million of abuse in the umbrella?
We can. It depends on the account, and that just usually comes down to an underwriting decision.
Got it. And good one to end on. Where do we send submissions, from Dave?
Excellent question. So I think on the last slide we showed the submission box. If we don't, we can send that out, but it's ATP-submissions@nsminc.com. And you can also feel free to send a submission to my attention or even Jim or Joe, and it'll get to the right place. And we'll show our email addresses on the last slide.
Awesome. So I think those are all our questions. And yes, here is that information on the screen for anyone who wants to maybe screenshot it or jot this down.
Yeah, so yeah, please feel free to do that. And again, we'll be emailing the recording, a link to the recording to everyone who registered, so that you have it for reference, have our contact information for reference. But please feel free to reach out with submissions, with questions, comments. We look forward to hearing with everyone and working with everyone, and we certainly appreciate you spending some time with us today.